What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. And joining me, as always, is the one and only Rachel Hopmayer, who so wonderfully filled in for me while I was out a week ago. Thank you for doing that, Rachel, along with the wonderful Perry Goldstein. But we have a ton to get to today. And before we do so, I have to ask you, what is the ideal Rachel Hopmayer Thanksgiving?
I'm so glad you asked. It involves absolutely zero cranberry crap, none of that gelatin stuff. I'm down for some cranberry cocktails, none of that gross stuff. Zero room for that at my table. I'm not anti the Matthew Judon take that mac and cheese is just a noodle dish, but I do think when done right, it has a place. So I won't go that far. Above and beyond, stuffing is the absolute number one route to run here. It is the breadwinner, literally, of Thanksgiving dinner to me. And if I had a choice, I would skip the turkey and do a brisket. In fact, that's the way I am going this year. I'm trying to make it a little more cultured. But yeah, stuffing is far and beyond the primary way to go for me Thanksgiving. I look forward. November in my mind is symbolized by a glass dish of stuffing. That is the only way I can visualize it. It's so elementary and so carb focused. It's disgustingly addicting.
It's an interesting dish. I've grown to tolerate stuffing. I'm not going to get into my Thanksgiving food takes here because
Tolerate.
I know I'm sorry to offend you at this moment.
And here I am being embarrassed about how much I love stuffing, and you just put me on blast.
I didn't put you on blast. Everyone is on your side here. Don't worry about that in any way, shape, or form. I'm the odd, weird one, so I'm kind of putting myself on blast. But again, I'm not going to get into all my Thanksgiving takes because
how can you just not get into it now?
are you not aware of this?
No.
This is like, oh my goodness. So this is like my most, like I lost followers, like legitimately.
I think I saw a rogue tweet, but no details. What are your takes?
This is a well-known Andy Hermanism at this. I hate all Thanksgiving food pretty much, like all of it. I don't like turkey. I don't like stuff. Like I said, I've learned to sort of tolerate stuffing or at least whatever. I hate pumpkin pie. I hate sweet, green beans, green bean casserole, sweet potatoes, all of it. I can't stand any of it. So like if there's a traditional Thanksgiving at my house, I do enjoy mac and cheese, but nobody in any of my families has ever made mac and cheese on Thanksgiving, which is part of the problem. But if like there's a traditional Thanksgiving like layout, my plate is like as much bread as I can possibly put on my plate, like dinner rolls or whatever, because that's pretty much the only thing I like. I maybe put like one little piece of like turkey with as much of the skin on it as possible because the skin actually tastes good. That's like the gist of my turkey. And then I'm hoping like heck there's an apple pie because I hate pumpkin pie.
I will take your side on that. I'm anti pumpkin pie. Very pro apple pie, pumpkin pie, pecan pie to me, all those weird mushy fillings. It's a texture thing. I don't like that. Pro apple pie. It's Americana. So
there we go. There we are. We're good there. And then I can actually like not like the cranberry like gelatin stuff, but like actual like cranberries like or whatever. Yeah. Like I get like, or I don't even know if it's like a cranberry sauce, but like the good stuff, not like the canned stuff, right? Like that I can put a little bit of that on my plate, but like that's about it. There's nothing else that I'm enjoying. So thankfully,
who hurt you? I'm just confused.
I have the taste buds of a toddler. There's no question about it. So if I go to my parents, they make me eat the traditional Thanksgiving fare. They're not going to spoil me for anything. Sure. My in-laws, because they love me, they will make me pizza every year. So if I
love to hear that. Okay, someone loves Andy.
Yes, absolutely. So pizza is my traditional Thanksgiving food if I get it. And then if we do our own family here with our family, our tradition is that everyone gets to pick their favorite dish, and we'll make all 4 dishes for the 2 kids, my wife and I. So that is my ideal traditional Thanksgiving is 4 meals, 1 for each of us, so we all get to pick our favorite thing.
That is really cute. I really like that. We're hosting Friendsgiving here for some of the beat because, we've got practice and life goes on Thursday. So we're doing Friendsgiving Wednesday. And I think Nicole Menor and I will be ordering Chinese food because that'll be open on Thursday. So it's how working girls get it done.
There you go. I like it a lot. The other question I wanted to ask you is, all right, so you're having a Packers Friendsgiving and you can only invite 3 members of the Packers organization to your Thanksgiving feast. Who are you inviting?
Okay. Okay.
I'm putting Rachel entirely on the spot. For anyone that's listening, by the way, I did not prep her for this in any way, shape, or form.
I gotta
But
really
any
think
three
about this.
people in the Packers organization as a whole that you can invite. It can also be somebody that's in the Packers Hall of Fame. Any real correlation to the Packers.
I don't know if I've ever been put on the spot like this in my life,
You're
but
welcome.
number one has to be Raina Stewart. I love that is my favorite coach to see out on the field every day. He came out to training camp every day in a straw hat, and the energy that he brings, I would love to share a
great
Thanksgiving
answer.
meal with that man. Number two, oh God, what direction do you go from here? Am I just gonna do a coach's dinner? Um, you know, I think I'd invite Aaron Rodgers. I think he likes to debate. He's an insightful thinker. I think we'd have a lot to talk about over dinner. So I think that would be a nice dinner guest to have. You want your dinner guests, in any formal dinner party to be engaging conversationalists, and you can never fault Aaron for that. So you know what? Me, Raina Stewart, Aaron Rodgers. I could throw Gutekunst in for the drama, but I think I'll just have Bakhtiari tag along just to keep the laughs going.
There you go.
And that way the vibes stay light enough, but also seems like a group that could have good conversation. But yeah, that was an interesting answer to give.
I like it, but it's logical answers for all of them.
It's just, oh yeah, if I could cover Raina Stewart every day, I would. I wish everybody got to see what an amazing person that is to have on staff and to be around. So yeah, far and away, Raina Stewart.
It's a really great answer. I wouldn't have thought of that, and I really like your reasoning for it. I'm definitely going Gutekunst. I would love to try to get as much like that side of the game, the GM side, how everything, like I would just like I could pick his brain all day on like, when you moved up in the 6th round here, who were you considering? And like, I could just nerd the heck out forever. And to that same extent, I might just bring along Ron Wolf along the way, because I think like just having those two in the room and having those two go back and forth would, I think, just be this, like, I could literally just sit there and just sip a cocktail and just watch those two talk for forever.
I've thought of a substitution. Go after, continue.
I don't know 1,000,000% who I would want my other one to be, because if you've got Ron Wolf and Brian Gutekunst, like, who perfectly fits with that? Maybe Matt LaFleur, because again, you just get another level of nerddom that again you'd love to hear some of the ideas on that. So maybe that's where I would go, would be LaFleur, Gutekunst, and then bring in Ron Wolf for fun too.
That's I can see that tablescape sitting down in Andy's mind. And this is how you know how on the spot he put me, because I literally have to make a substitution. But now that I've, begun planning the tablecloths and the candlesticks and the formal invitations for this dinner, I have realized this is my perfect trifecta. Raina Stewart, Aaron Rodgers, and the beloved equipment manager, Red. I love him. What a shining light. And I think that's the perfect intellectual and humorous combination of brains that I want at my table, because all three of those men never fail to have insightful football conversations with me, as well as make me laugh my ass off. So officially, that's my Thanksgiving dinner party.
I'm officially tweeting that you kicked David Bakhtiari out of your
I'll do it. It's just, you have to balance the ratios.
You do. No, I like that trio a lot. That'd be really, really fun. Like, there's so many fun ways. Like you said, getting Gutekunst and Rodgers at the same table would certainly be really interesting. There's a ton of, like, you could go of like, all right, who's going to bring what dish, and like, what would you like, what would you ask Aaron Rodgers to bring as the thing to pass at the,
I think I could trust him with turkey. I think that's a balanced, acceptable thing for Aaron Rodgers to know how to do.
It could be like a tofu turkey. You don't know if it's going to be.
Listen, if he wants to bring any sort of protein, I trust him with the protein. That's fine. Right.
That works. And if you did bring Bakhtiari, he would bring the beer. So like,
obviously that's handled.
There's all different ways to go with this, but I like the answers. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, we have to move on, actually talk about real football stuff and take you off the spot, I guess. But he talked a little bit more about his toe injury on Pat McAfee. It is officially a pinky toe injury. It is not a big toe or a ring toe or a middle toe, or what's the second toe called? Is there
I call that the pointer toe. So
we're not calling it a pointer toe.
It's like your pointer finger, index toe.
All right. Well, I think that probably works. But anyway, it is a pinky toe. I'm
Yeah,
just going to put you on the spot with the most random things I possibly can
fine.
the entire show. But obviously, this is something that he's going to have to deal with. I think that's best case scenario, and he kind of mentioned that as well. If you have to have a toe injury, probably the pinky toe is the one to have. But you can still see. I thought he played phenomenal in the second half, and I don't know what adjustment that they made at halftime after it got stepped on and sort of aggravated even more. But I thought in the first half there were some throws that maybe he wasn't stepping into quite as much, wasn't quite as mobile. In the second half, he was great. I mean, you can tell he's toughing things out. But man, if he can play anywhere like he did in that second half. I guess I don't know how much of a concern it is, but you feel for him that this is obviously something that he's going to have to play through.
Absolutely. I think while we got some more specifics today from Rodgers on McAfee, at the end of the day, this does lead us to a whole new path of questioning. He said it's again, that pinky toe. When at least it's not a big toe injury where you could see a lot more difficulty stepping into some of these throws and, not having that experience of over tipping like he is. But at the end of the day, how far down is this, a metatarsal or farther down pinky toe injury that's actually affecting the whole outside of his foot? He says it's more of a bone based issue. AJ Hawk interestingly mentioned that the Packers are typically conservative with their in-game or halftime, medicinal solutions. So I don't know that he necessarily took a cortisone shot.
He might not have.
Something much softer. And at the end of the day, how much does that really fix that in-game pain management? So I'm fascinated by that issue as well. But at the end of the day, Rodgers said that surgery and resting and sitting out are all very viable options that were presented to him, but he's not going to do that. And he's refusing to sit right now. So obviously, Rodgers is very determined to make it back to the NFC Championship, fight for that Super Bowl. But it is interesting that this seems to be a significant enough injury that surgery is on the table.
Yeah, and it certainly could be something that he has in the offseason as well. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. And as we know, this is a team that can desperately use the bye. And, I don't think that the bye week is just going to all of a sudden heal this for Aaron. But at the same token, any rest that he can possibly get, I'm sure will help. And, I'm sure it does affect when he's not practicing, I'm sure it does affect him to some extent. And we saw him and this offense come out a little bit slow. You could see it took a little bit of time for him to get in a rhythm. And I don't know if that is, related to practice. It certainly could be. Maybe it's happenstance. I will say the Vikings did a tremendous job in coverage in that first half. And there wasn't a ton of spots for him to go, but I think it all works together. And this is definitely going to be something that affects him.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of, again, there's so many factors to why they had the slow start. It's Rodgers' limited reps in practice. I do also think some of LaFleur's play calling could have been a little too much of a burden. And he mentioned this a little bit in his press conference about how much they were putting on Rodgers in his return. And it's hard not to expect that level of caliber play from him. But also at the end of the day, when you're looking at the amount of motion that was used later in the game and the fact that Rodgers had the time to type of analyze that and not have to snap those passes off quick that he was overthrowing too quickly, that really does impact how fast and how efficient your offense is going to be in the first half. So I do think, yes, the main concern is the slow start with Rodgers' limited communication, chemistry, and reps with the offense in practice right now. But I do think other factors should be noted there.
No, I think that's a really great point. Rodgers also brought up some other injuries on the team, including Zadarius Smith, Jair Alexander, David Bakhtiari. We also found out that David Bakhtiari had, a knee scope, which, kind of cleaned some things up as well. Seems like, yes, exactly. End of season. Oh my goodness. That was amazing. We're glad you're not doing the knee scope.
Absolutely not. But I did do that computer game in like 5th grade where you slice the knee. Oh, my 90s babies will remember this. There was a little computer game that we did on Windows and it was like, slice the knee, open the muscle. I could, if I remembered.
That was the game where you cut the fruit, I think that you're thinking of.
No, not the fruit. That's Fruit Ninja for the record. And I'm not that young. It was a knee game. Someone will comment remembering that. I swear on my life.
Yeah, us 25-year-olds, we know exactly what you're talking about. I had Operation. I had the game Operation. That's the only.
I had that as well. Andy Herman, continue. Arthroscopic surgery.
Yes, arthroscopic knee surgery. You're talking about metatarsals. You're talking about arthroscopic knee surgery.
Yeah, we've got bio degrees out here now.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, long story short, Jair Alexander sounds like hasn't had any setbacks. He kind of went a little bit out of his way to say Jair hasn't had any setbacks. Obviously, David had the arthroscopic procedure, and then it was sort of vague, as everyone has been all season on Z, unfortunately. But talk about that. I want to hear your take on what his thoughts were on the injuries. But I also want to ask you, because I'm just putting you on the spot all day, if you get one of these players back, which one would you want most?
David Bakhtiari, far and away, because I think, but all three of them are still tremendous losses to what the Packers expected to compete with this year. At the end of the day, the Packers have time and time again proven themselves able to have a competitive secondary without Jair now for 9 weeks?
It's been a while.
Yeah. And without Za'Darius for much of this. I also think that it's way more likely that the Packers do get Bakhtiari back for some point in time this season or postseason than Za'Darius Smith at all at this point. Bakhtiari has to be the choice, because honestly, the O-line still needs reassurance, even though they have won games with Yash. They've had the mobility. Now that you have Elton Jenkins out, they simply cannot afford any more blows at this point. And having Bakhtiari back there would really shore up the other four positions and give them a much more tighter space to work with. At the end of the day, everybody else has been able to make it work succinctly and consistently. Maybe not the secondary as much against the Vikings, but let's take that out of the question. Every unit gets a mulligan allegedly this season. So if everybody else has been able to work it out, you have to get Bakhtiari back to the O-line.
No, that's 100% would be my answer as well. All five of the guys that are potential starters, Yash, John Runyon, Lucas Patrick, Royce Newman, Billy Turner, any of those five guys, I think you can start on any given Sunday. Yep. The five of them together is the concern, right? Like, exactly. I don't think Billy Turner the last few weeks has struggled more than most people have talked about. Yeah. I thought he had a really rough game. Both PFF and I in our grades had him as the lowest rated player on offense this past week. We've known Royce's struggles. We know Yash is an ascending player, but still is going to have his inconsistencies and his ups and downs. We know Lucas has struggled this season. I think John Runyon has had a really nice season. But if you're to the point where Runyon's all of a sudden your top offensive lineman, things have gone quite differently from last season when Corey Linsley, all-pro, David Bakhtiari, all-pro, Elton Jenkins played like an all-pro. And then Lucas had a very nice season at right guard a season ago. Rick Wagner stepped up when he needed to, and Billy Turner had a nice season. And it's just a night and day difference from going to 5 to 6 guys who are playing cohesive, really strong offensive line play to going to 4 guys that you're just hoping can get by. And John Runyon as a nice ascending piece. That's a horse of a different color. So I think if you all of a sudden get Bakhtiari and Myers back, and I know Myers had his ups and downs as well, and it's still, rookie season and things like that. And we don't know. I think it's always foolhardy to say like, oh, you're going to get David Bakhtiari and you can plug him back in, or you're going to get Rashawn Gary back in and you can plug him back in, right? If Rashawn Gary doesn't have the same torque and can't, use his hands the same way that he was, but he's got, a bionic arm, if 70% of Rashawn Gary is still a help to this team, right. But it's nowhere near 100% Rashawn Gary, right? And same with Bakhtiari. Yeah, David Bakhtiari would unequivocally, even like 60% of him is going to be an upgrade over Yash. But if he's not 100%, all pro David Bakhtiari, there's still a very big difference there. So, but I do think if you get Bakhtiari and Runyon and Myers left to center, I think you have a very strong left side of your line. And then I still think, potentially the Lucas Patrick or Royce Newman can be fine at right guard, and Billy Turner, I still think has the ability to play better at right tackle. So I think that fixes a lot of issues where, as you mentioned, I think defensively, they've shown that they can get by without some of these guys.
I completely agree with the way you're assessing those, remaining starting 5. At the end of the day, it is so interesting that we're now sitting here so many weeks in after the camp we saw, and that it is John Runyon that's at least had the most consistent ascent this season, where everybody else has faced some kind of roller coaster. Obviously, Royce Newman has very much had his ups and downs. I think Lucas Patrick would be second in terms of consistent ascent, but again, has had bumps and bruises lately. Billy Turner, especially as of late, just hasn't been the same player that he has been. I don't know if he's dealing with more force on that side, balancing all these factors, but at the end of the day, you have to have these starters line up. And ultimately, we've been seeing Jair around the facility more. He's had a football in his hand. Even last week, I saw him at least doing some running drills and fake catches. So there's progress to be made, but no certain timeline. It's been quite a long time without him. And clearly the secondary has done a pretty darn good job. They're the most cohesive unit on this team without Jair Alexander. I can't believe we're saying it, but it's true. Like, that's almost honestly the least concerning piece of all of this.
Yeah, which is insane to say, and certainly completely unexpected going into the season. Now, as far as the offensive line goes, Green Bay did make a couple moves, 3 to be exact, including one that was reported late in the day by Rob Domofsky. The first is that they put Elton Jenkins on IR, not unexpected. Of course, he's going to be out the remainder of the season and likely to start next season. They moved Ben Braden up from the practice squad to the active roster. Remember, Braden, not you, I know you remember, but our listeners remember that, Braden was in the competition for the starting spot all throughout training camp, came up a little bit short and was sort of a surprise cut at the beginning of camp. And then he still made it through to the practice squad, which was a huge win for Green Bay. And now he comes in as really a key depth piece on this offensive line now. And then they actually bring back John Dietzen, according to Rob, to the practice squad. Of course, former Wisconsin high school player, former Wisconsin Badger, now gets a chance with the Packers practice squad. He was at one point considered really a top, maybe not a top prospect along the offensive line, but certainly a real draftable player. Had some injuries and so on and so forth that kind of derailed his career a little bit, came back. Didn't look quite the same in training camp, but the fact that he gets to kind of continue his dream and try to get back on the path that he was once at Wisconsin, I think is a plus for both the player and the team. But any thoughts on those transactions?
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating pulling back into the July and August archives. I mean, I had Ben Braden on my list to make cuts. And I think a lot of us were shocked when he was cut. In terms of the Dietzen transaction, it's interesting because when you looked at how they were coming out of Madison, I had Dietzen making it over Cole Van Lannon. But like you said, those injuries were definitely rising and prevalent throughout camp. And that's really kind of what separated him from the pack. Again, from Seymour to Madison to Green Bay, these hometown stories are awesome. Obviously, the Packers aren't doing this intentionally, but I hope for local fans it's something to enjoy. And I can't imagine that this is, again, a dream come true opportunity. So again, the depth is nice on the practice squad. Hopefully it's a chance for him to develop further. I think Braden is an awesome pickup, and I'll really be interested to see how he's acclimating in practice, going from one side to the other, just in terms of scout team versus starting, and really seeing how far he's come.
Yeah, I was shocked that no team tried to poach him from the practice squad through the entirety of the season with all the injuries you see along the offensive line, that not one team was like, hey, Green Bay almost started him. Let's just bring him in for a few weeks and see if he's got anything. I was shocked by that, but
absolutely,
awesome for Green Bay that he's still around and able to be put on the active roster. Let's wrap things up today, Rachel, with just kind of a general pulse check of this team. They're banged up as you can, as could possibly be imagined. Star player after star player after star player is out, injured, hurting, etc. Not totally different than a lot of teams in this league being banged up, but I think it's the star power that is hurting that's maybe a little bit worse for Green Bay. They haven't had their bye yet. They're one of the very few teams that has not had a bye. They're banged up. They're beat up. Matt LaFleur said before the Viking game that they were tired. Now they lose a heartbreaking game to Minnesota, are facing a Rams team that has looked bad their last 2 weeks. They're going to be super motivated and is coming off of a bye themselves. And then Green Bay finally gets that bye and then heads into a tough stretch. What is your overall pulse check on this team right now and where things are at?
I think right now I've got a couple bullets for people to write down. I think at the end of the day, heartbreaking loss, sure. Ran out the clock, still scored 4 touchdowns. There are positive takeaways. Packers still held Dalvin Cook to 86 yards. That in itself is a feat. The Vikings arguably played their best game of the year, and they ultimately scored more points. That's how football works. The clock runs out to 0. But the Packers are definitely on shaky ground leading into this bye week. Like you said, they're barely hobbling to the finish line. Their stars are hurting. And so much has changed since the Packers played the Rams in January. They've got Stafford, Von Miller, OBJ, healthy Aaron Donald coming off this bye. I mean, this is a much tougher challenge, I think, even at home, just based on how beat the Packers are now than last week was going into Minnesota. So I think Packers fans need to, although the bye could have been obviously much appreciated before, Packers fans need to thank their lucky stars that's coming up now, because they really, really need this rest. So many players need this rest, even maybe those who aren't on the injury list or something, but so many players have pushed through so much this season that really need this time, that if you want to even consider a momentous postseason haul, you really need this reset, because the Packers racked up wins that they needed to this fall, again, to have that type of seeding. But at the end of the day, losing 2 of their last 3, this could get very worse very quickly.
Yeah, I think there's a chance. I think there's a good chance they lose this week. And I think this would be the first time Matt LaFleur loses 2 games in a row. But I think there's a real good chance that they get the time off that they need. They get one of the later buys of any of the teams that are probably heading into the playoffs. And then I think they have a schedule that they can potentially win out the remainder of their regular season games. I know there's a tough game against Baltimore. I know Cleveland's not exactly going to be easy, even though they're not playing, really well at all right now. So they're in Minnesota again, right? It's not like it's a cakewalk, but I think these are games Green Bay can win, especially if they get a little bit healthier. Then I think I look back and let's just say you get to this point, you go into the bye, and let's say they've lost 4 games, right? I look at those 4 games and I would say that the Saints game was a complete aberration. It was their first game of the year. It was literally like their last preseason game to me. Like that is not in any way, shape, or form reminiscent of the Packers team that we have seen at any point this season.
Exactly.
I basically throw that one out the window. The Kansas City Chiefs game, no Aaron Rodgers in that game. That's a Jordan Love. And I think based on how that game went, I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that if Aaron plays in that game, they win that game. Probably not, not even close. Right? I think it's an easy win for Green Bay, especially how Green Bay's defense played in that game. The game against Minnesota definitely allowed some points. However, their pressure was fantastic. And Kirk Cousins threw up about 10 hero balls that in any given Sunday, Green Bay comes down with 2 or 3 of those. And Green Bay wins that game again, I think fairly easily.
Discount Minnesota's performance here.
Yeah, that it was, if anybody else plays that game where Green Bay's able to get that much pressure and the quarterback's willing to throw that many balls up for grabs, Green Bay's going to win that game 90 times out of 100. I'm not concerned out over that result. You'd like to see Mason Crosby make the field goal, things like that. And if they lose to a Rams team where, again, Green Bay's had these insane injuries and haven't had a bye and things like that, that would be the one game where I'd potentially look like and say all right, maybe they lost to a better team and just didn't have it on that Sunday. But I would have zero concern if you told me that they go into the bye week with those 4 losses and they are able to get healthy out of it. Yeah, they need to clean up the special teams. Yeah, they actually need to get healthy. But overall, I feel very still optimistic if they can get healthy about this, where this Packers team is at right now.
I think that's an astute way of looking at it. And you have to think what we could have Aaron Jones returning after this bye week. There are a lot of pieces in play, that there are a lot of players that need this rest to either recover from short-term injuries or just keep resting what they're doing. MBS dealing with a hamstring, AJ Dillon's dealing with a heck of a couple weeks and taking on that load. So there's just a lot of moving parts right now that I really think should be considered in terms of, all right, some of these losses were unavoidable. Some of them happened. You get outplayed. And at the end of the day, you guys should be thanking the Lombardi himself that the bye week is here.
Agreed. 1,000,000%. Rachel, what's the over under on how much stuffing you're going to eat on Thursday?
3 servings.
3 servings. I think that's right. I'm not going to take the bet because I don't think you're going to go.
Vegas always knows the line, my man.
That's a good point. Vegas always knows. Rachel, tremendous stuff as always. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure we will talk next week. Where can we find your work and where can we follow you on Twitter?
Sure. You can always watch me on NBC 26 in Green Bay, and you can find me online at Rachel Hopmayer.
Awesome. You can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I will be right back here tomorrow with an all new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack, go.
Happy stuffing.